following is intended only for mature audiences.
Open your ears and lube up your butthole. It's time for the What Do We Call It podcast. Now, here's your host. It's Jmann. Welcome to the What Do We Call It podcast. I'm Jmann.
And I'm number one fan, Tim.
Kentucky Democrats lash out over bill criminalizing police insults, but the bill still passes the state Senate. I read this the other day. I thought this shit was very interesting because of the precedent that it sets. Basically, in Frankfurt, the Kentucky State Senate passed a bill that enhanced penalties for crimes related to rioting after more than an hour of heated debate, including criticism it would be criminalizing insulting police officers and chill protected speech.
Well, if they're talking about increasing the penalties for rioting, how does that turn into penalizing speaking out against cops?
So the senator that introduced this, Danny Carroll, a Republican out of Benton, Kentucky, he's a retired police officer. And he said his Senate Bill 211 would crack down on and send a message to those who, quote, tried to destroy the city of Louisville in the civil unrest last year after the Breonna Taylor trial for the cops that fucking shot her. So in addition to raising the punishments on crimes related to rioting, prohibiting early release on such offenses, SB 211 would make it a crime to provoke an officer verbally to the point it could provoke a violent response. So he said insulting an officer is not going to cause anyone to go to jail, but if a rioter accosts, insults, taunts, or challenges an officer with offensive words or by gestures or other physical contact, that would have a direct tendency to provoke a violent response from the perspective of a reasonable and prudent person. So they're using how would a reasonable person react? Now, if somebody goes up to a cop and flips him the bird in their face like, fuck you, pig, I'd be like...
Cop's not going to react to it.
Yeah, okay, whatever, dickhead.
But, like, you've seen those videos of people getting in cops' faces and just bearing on them and just chewing them and just screaming and spitting on them and shit.
Yeah.
Police are only human. At some point, one of those officers is gonna hit his breaking point and lash out. I will show you, motherfucker, just what I... So I don't think this is trying to limit free speech, although on the surface it does sound like it. It sounds like this guy is trying to protect the police that just couldn't take it anymore.
And he's trying to discourage people from trying to push a cop to that point because obviously there's that thin blue line between police and civilians. But you don't want to sit there and continually push a cop to the point where he beats the shit out of you. These are human beings, and they do deserve at least some modicum of respect. Now, whether or not you agree with how these trials go, like when Freddie Gray died in police custody in Baltimore, or the Michael Brown thing in St. Louis area, or the Breonna Taylor thing in Kentucky. Whether or not you agree with the verdict... Not all cops committed those acts. Some cops did. So why do you sit there and feel that it's fair to shit on all cops because of what a few of them did? Because if it was reversed, and they'll claim it is all the time, like, oh, you're targeting us, this is racial profiling. If I said all black people were shitty because a handful of them commit crimes, they would say I'm both out of touch and wickedly racist, right?
They would.
If I said that all gay men had AIDS, that would probably be a grand overgeneralization, wouldn't you think?
Definitely.
And if I said that all women that end up in abusive relationships and get the fuck beat out of them probably said something that provoked it, I would be seen as both insensitive, misogynistic, and overgeneralizing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you say that all cops are bastards like they do... when they're fucking not. I have friends that are cops. They're good people. Am I with them every minute of their shift? No. But because I know them as people, I've already humanized them. I don't view them as just this fucking cyborg in a badge who's looking to kill everybody's buzz and fuck up their good time. If you want to protest peacefully in the name of social justice and criminal justice reform, that is fine. But when you throw shit at the cops, when you shove officers, when you try to fucking corner them with numbers much greater than they have, it's going to elicit a response.
Fight or flight.
So it stands to reason that you want to make doing that a more serious offense, hopefully so you can arrest a few people right out of the gate and dissuade all the rest from going there.
Yeah, if you show the example, then chances are it won't happen. I mean, and to talk about the whole inciting violence, getting in a cop's face and screaming at him until he breaks, that's inciting violence. Okay,
yeah, you're provoking a reaction. You're trying to get a reaction. You're basically saying, I fucking dare you, which is stupid because they have the power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's literally in their job to maintain peace and order. So when you spit so much vitriol and so many expletives at them, that's disorderly conduct. You're disturbing the peace. And if you put your hands on them, it could become, in this state, in Minnesota, a 4th-degree assault of a police officer. Same goes for firefighters, for EMS, for correctional officers. They're a protected class of jobs because they're public servants. And doing so is a fucking felony.
Mm-hmm.
So now you've got Senator Gerald Neal, who's a Democrat, which I know makes you really happy. He represents a majority black district in West Louisville, who he said he was insulted by this bill, which he views as a direct attack on his constituents who protest for and demand racial justice. And you can do all that shit.
Yeah, it doesn't say you can't.
I don't think anybody really doesn't want you to, except for a very select segment of the population that usually, back in the day, would put on a pillowcase with some eye holes in it and ride a horse to go hang out with some tiki torches.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking racist-ass white supremacists would probably not want you to do that. The majority of people see this shit, and I don't think they're like, well, he probably had it coming, she had it coming. No. You want to question what happened, but most people see all the rioting, and they're like, fuck you. But if they see you peacefully protesting, they may be drawn to your cause.
Well, you know what? It also says this Democrat senator, when he says this is insulting to him and his constituents, it kind of sounds like he's saying his constituents are going to be violent no matter what. Like, they're all violent people, and you're just targeting them.
Well, I think it goes even further, as he's saying, because he represents a mostly black district.
That's what I mean, yeah.
That, you're just doing this so you can arrest more black people to quell social disorder. I doubt that's the aim. I think they just want to stop social disorder and rioting and public property destruction.
Yeah, I think this past year has been a demonstration of what happens when you don't try to quell it right away. And then you're like the Mayor Frey of Minneapolis and Governor Walz, and you're just letting them, give them a couple of days to burn shit down. They'll wear themselves out. No, you need to quell that shit right away. I don't care what the demographic of the area is. I don't care what their message is.
What their socio-economic
when you start rioting, start rioting like that and burning businesses and looting, you're no longer protesting. You're just being an asshole.
You're being opportunistic.
If you want to look at getting things done in a peaceful way, look at Martin Luther King Jr. He got more shit done through speeches and walking than anybody has in the last 10 fucking years.
Yeah, all he had to do was show up and stroll. He didn't have to throw any fucking Molotov cocktails at the cops.
And like I said, he got shit done.
But that look conversely at the Black Panthers who try to do it by force. And how many of them...
They got a bad rap.
Got swept up. And it's like, Jesus Christ,
so,
this was supposed to be about black power, not about like black power and fucking infamy and fighting and destruction.
So if you want to look at what the Black Panthers did and what happened to them and see how that gets you versus Martin Luther King who did things peacefully, see who got more done and did no damage.
That same Democratic senator said he was befuddled by the legislation, as laws are already on the books to deal with violent rioters, saying it could harm the city's efforts to come together and heal after the tumultuous months of protests kicked off by the fatal police shootings of Breonna Taylor. Here's what I would like to say. Coming together and healing is a phrase that you hear quite a bit. It's a very buzzy phrase. And it's almost as if the social justice warriors want nothing but exactly what they're looking for. Absolute, just destruction of the system. We don't want the police. And we don't need people in jail, and you need to stop mass incarceration. Well, okay, well, we're locking up criminals who are breaking laws and acting violently. And look what happened when you defunded the police in Minneapolis and tried to force them out of your neighborhoods now, and you have violent crime at a crazy high in both Minneapolis and St. Paul. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of shit that happens. But to sit there and say that not arresting people that put their hands on the police or rioters that try to provoke a violent response, you're trying to cause violence. Don't tell me that arresting them or being harder on them is going to stop the community from coming together to heal. Punishing those cops, them losing their jobs and then being sued civilly, and the city itself paying out a lawsuit settlement to the family, that's going to help the community come together and heal. And then getting together with the cops and then seeing them in community-based efforts of volunteering and outreach, that will help you heal. But not some fucking guy that is screaming in a fucking cop's riot mask and basically launching spit at him and shoving him and like daring him like, cross this line, fucking cross this line. Letting that shit go on isn't healing anything. If it's doing anything at all, it's creating an even bigger gulf between the two sides.
It creates a bigger divide.
That's fucking stupid. And maybe this is like overall kind of a boring issue to anybody listening, but I find it very interesting given the social climate we're in, that somebody is trying to make a change. Now, the irony is not lost on me that the person doing it is a white male former cop, because everyone's going to say, well, it's a former cop. Well, he's a Republican. Of course they feel this way. I don't think he's doing it just to sweep up more blacks. I highly doubt that's his intention.
Doesn't sound like it.
Because I didn't hear too many cops that were happy with what happened in the Breonna Taylor shooting or the trial.
No, and there's... I don't know too much about it. It just...
Well, it drastically altered the way that they utilize warrants. They said, we're not going to do no-knock warrants anymore. We're not going to do these nightcap warrants. They're going to change the way that they serve warrants so that they're more careful and to prevent this from happening again. They made a change. The system
realized it made a mistake. Yeah.
So now...
At least they acknowledged it.
You can still be mad at the system about this. Fine. Because no amount of punishing those cops brings her back. It can't undo the harm. But if you let this shit continue to go on unchecked, isn't it just going to inspire a greater divide? Politically, racially, socioeconomically. It's like a fucking Venn diagram, and in the middle is all this rage and rioting. So one thing that, when I was reading this, really grabbed me was that law professors and attorneys say this bill violates the First, 4th, and 14th Amendments to the Constitution, including free speech, equal protection, and due process. And somebody said, if this law were to pass, it's likely too vague and broad to uphold a conviction against an appeal, they said. If challenged, the U.S. Supreme Court could rule based on the vagueness doctrine, or the idea that the law is too unenforceable if it's too vague for the average citizen to understand. That was said by Geoffrey Stone. He's a professor at the University of Chicago Law School. The bill would, quote, chill permissible protected speech because a reasonable person wouldn't know what behavior was prohibited or permitted. I find that to be bullshit.
That's bullshit. You can tell when you're being an asshole to somebody.
Well, if you're going to get up in the faces of the cops, how many people see the cops and are like, fucking mellow out, act cool, be quiet, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't act a fool in front of the police because I don't want to dare them to arrest me. I like being free and having no criminal record. So to say that no one's going to understand this, I think the difference between fuck you, piggy, or I smell bacon, versus putting your hands on them, cornering them, making them feel unsafe. That's bullshit.
Yeah, like I said, on the surface, this bill looks like it's trying to quell freedom of speech, but as we read into it, to me, it doesn't.
When you start putting criminal offenses on insulting a particular type of government employee, that law is going to be unconstitutional in all its applications. That was said by Michael Abate, a First Amendment attorney who has represented the Courier Journal, which is part of the USA Today network. It gives far too much discretion to individual police officers to make arrests when their feelings are hurt. I don't think any cop wants to be the first person who is going to arrest somebody just because they said, fuck you, pig.
Well, even then, most cops nowadays have body cams. Everyone's got a cell phone. So if the cop decided, oh, he called me an asshole, I'm going to arrest him and say he was inciting violence and there's going to be evidence to not support it. There's going to be evidence that he was lying. So your officer's not going to just, oh, he called me a name, so I arrested him.
Well, the commanding officer is not going to be very happy if you're making these kinds of arrests. Because he knows it's just going to stir up shit in public.
Yeah. It has to be like the extreme situation. In the face, 2 officers cornered by 7 or 8 guys that know they're going to get their, they know they're going to get their asses beat. In that situation, yeah, you can arrest them. I'm sure the officers would take action at that point.
Now, the counterpoint to this would be when the RNC was in town here in St. Paul, and there was a bunch of protesters that just got blanket arrested. They fucking corralled them, and they mass arrested them. They held them for 48 hours, and they cut them loose without charges. They did that to discourage any other fuckery. And interestingly enough, I know someone, met them recently, who was in the military, and their unit was brought in during the RNC. And their unit was brought in to, quote, and you'll love this, fuck shit up. What does that mean? It means they were there to stop motherfuckers from making Molotovs and arrest people and yank them and throw them into fucking squad cars or mass arrest vehicles.
Gotcha, bitch!
So let's say, in the spirit of the story, that they passed a law in our state here in Minnesota that was about preventing people from provoking police by being, extra verbal abusive, their word choice, their volume, their posture, and if they put their hands on the cops, even if it was like incidental contact. Some guy's up in a cop's face and he's talking with his hands and he bumps the cop. And then they throw him to the ground, bend his fucking arms back and cuff him and stuff him. Would you have a problem with that?
I would want there to be more intent that he was physically going to try. Like if he's doing this in video and you could tell he just bumped him.
Yeah.
And they grabbed him and arrested him. I'd be like, oh, maybe you jumped the gun a little bit. But however, again, it's that flight or fight thing. You get bumped. You don't know if there's another hit that's going to be coming. So would I support it? Yes.
Now, conversely, if you're in the burbs and you see a bunch of kids throw like milkshakes at a fucking cop car, do you think they all need to be arrested? Or do they all need to just be talked to and have their parents called?
Something like that. Talk to and have their parents called. Because they're not in the cop's face yelling and screaming at him. The cop's not in a situation where he's definitely outnumbered or, even if like kids versus one adult. I'm sure the officer would give the kids a talking to, get the parents involved or whatever. But in a completely different situation, in a situation where there's protesting / rioting and someone's in your face screaming and yelling at you, that's different than a kid throwing a milk bottle at a cop car.
How about people punching and kicking a squad car that's trying to drive down the street to get to a protest zone to stop potential riotous activity?
Arrest them.
What about?
Why are you kicking and stomping on a police car that's trying to go somewhere?
Should they arrest them or should they just get out with a couple of cans of fucking bear mace and lay them all out? Wouldn't that be
I wouldn't mind that
response?
being an option.
I'm just saying, I would never do these things.
I wouldn't either.
If I feel passionate enough about something to protest, I'm going to fucking hold a sign. But if the cops come in and they're in riot gear and they say disperse, I'm going to go, all right, see you guys later.
I'm going home.
Yeah, I'm not going to be like, fuck you for trying to shut us. Like, there's another, you can go back another day, another time, another place. There's other ways.
Yeah, I said my message for tonight. I'll see you later. I'm going to go home.
It's a very curious law because what if they did something like that here? It's entirely plausible with the Officer Chauvin trial for the officers involved in George Floyd's death. We're about to see possibly unprecedented amounts of fucking more rioting and
There's
shit
going to be.
if it doesn't go their way.
Even
And
if
by
it
they,
does
I
go.
mean people that think these cops need to be fucking crucified, the social justice warriors.
Even if he does go to jail and go to prison and all that, people are still going to go and riot. We won, justice, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you can't make them happy. Some of the people in those crowds are opportunists, and they're going to take the opportunity to get more free shit.
So if they passed that law here to clamp down on rioting, you'd have no problem?
No, I wouldn't.
Because I think it's going to be less about rioting and more about people are going to say it's open season. I'm pissed off that these cops weren't charged the way I wanted them to, so now I'm going to take it out on all cops. It's going to be a scary time to be an officer.
It already is a scary time to be an officer.
No, I mean like an all-time scariest ever time to be a Minneapolis cop.
Yeah. And they're, 200 and some odd officers short right now?
Something like that, between all the people that quit or the people that went out with PTSD after the riots.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're fucked.
The city's fucked.
I get the point of the law. Whether or not it's constitutional, I'm not able to say.
On the surface, it looks like it's not. I will say that. It looks like it's trying to quell free speech. But when you, like I said, when we delved into it, I didn't see it so much as limiting free speech as trying to keep people from inciting violence.
And he could have this bill fail and then reintroduce it with more clear-cut definitions and language and get it passed. And it would be fine because it wouldn't fall under that unconstitutionality due to vagueness of law. So there it is in a nutshell. Interact with the show on Twitter at What Do We Call It. That is at What Do We Call It. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/group/What Do We Call It podcast show. For the What Do We Call It podcast, I'm Jmann.
And I'm number one fan Tim.
And that's the end.